Boys and girls, your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 947. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do tonight for your kind consideration. Well, it's all things Red Bull. Why wouldn't it be? That's all anyone's been talking about all week long. So we figured, well, we don't want to be left out. We want to talk about that. We've got opinions on the Christian Horner thing. So that's what we're going to talk about. Before doing that, I have to introduce a co-host. I have to go all the way to the right coast of our nation, nestled near our nation's capital. You know you love her, the lovely, the redoubtable
Grace!
How you doing, Grace? Grace, I got to tell you, you're jumping on the grenade here. Because spending a podcast talking about Red Bull and Christian Horner is so not what you would want to do. If it was about McLaren and Zach, you're all in.
Oh, no, except this is not the kind of news I want to have about McLaren and Zach. I enjoy more maybe than I should that this is about Red Bull. But whereas if it was, I don't enjoy it. That's, but anyway, the politics, the spectacle of it is enjoyable. But yes, if it was McLaren, it would just be more tears. Like we finally got over Spygate and everybody being mad that they copied 4 pages that a Kinko's down the street. We finally got to a point where we're like filming movies and Woking and we're winning championships and we're going to win them both this year. And then more crap has to come out. Yeah. I don't think so. So I'm fine with it being not.
Hey, I got to give speaking of McLaren fans, I got to give a shout out to my friend Wes Crago and his wonderful, she's absolutely cute as can be. Beautiful daughter, Krista. They are longtime listeners of the podcast. He's a big McLaren fan.
Well, hey. Excellent.
Krista's a big Lando fan.
Good choice.
And how cool is this? So Wes and his daughter have this mission that they're going to, over time, obviously, they're going to go to every major baseball stadium in America. And it's a great thing. And so they were coming to St. Louis. And he reached out and he said, "Hey, I'm not a weirdo. I'm not a freak. Would love to, meet up with you. And we did. So I took Mrs. Camber down, and we had a few drinks with Wes and his wonderful daughter, and it was a great time."
I do love the premise of I'm not a weirdo, just a fan. Hey, you want to hang out?
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Wes and I were talking all things McLaren, which is great. I even wore my McLaren Polo number 4 Lando shirt for him, in celebration of all things Wes and his daughter. So anyway, It was great. Had a great time, Wes. Thanks so much for doing that. And if anyone else is ever coming through town, let me know. And if we can work out schedules, it'd be great. Yeah. But Paul Charsley gets all the love, Grace. You and I rarely ever get to meet our listeners, and Paul's out at all these races, and people go by and see Paul, and he gives them tours, and Paul gets all the love.
Well, I don't work for a racing team, and neither do you. So there's only so much I can offer you here, but yeah, anytime it would be fun. I've hung out with listeners. It's always a good time if you're in the area.
It is a good time. Good time.
And I promise we won't be any weirder in person. I've had multiple people tell me, like, you are exactly like you are on the podcast. I'm like, I guess that's good.
It's
cool.
Kind of what I said. Oh, you just kind of like you are.
That's it.
We're basically friends having a beer and talking about the sport we love. So
I'm not a very good actor, so yeah.
Right.
Very good.
Right. Well, let's jump into the big news. Look, the big news this week: Christian Horner being removed as his current role at Red Bull. Some questions about whether he's still retained under employment at Red Bull, but just not in that role. There's some detail there. And I've seen some things recently, Helmut Marko. I saw a headline earlier today that he may have been involved. I think he was involved. That we reached out for a comment, and here's what Helmut had to say.
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
There you go. That's pretty much it. So he's doing to Christian what he's done to a lot of drivers, apparently. So
that's right.
Karma, Christian.
He might crack them. You still work for the team. You just work over there now.
Yeah. Yeah.
This seat is for winners. You go over there.
So, Christian, the broom closet is down there, and then you'll find the mop and the bucket.
Yes.
And you'll be able, and then could you come in like in the evenings after everybody's gone and mop up?
Yeah, what is, I mean, Mike Crack is what, like trackside operations or something like that. That is now, Christian Horner, you are now in charge of trackside operations, you and Mike Crack. Congratulations.
Right.
Because they have to keep them at the team, just, right, like you said, in a broom closet or something, right? Because otherwise, I mean, Christian Horner going to another team, you do not want at Red Bull, right? And so if you can't send him on gardening leave, you might crack him. You make him in charge of trackside operations, and he's still a part of the team. He's just not that a part of a team.
He might cracked.
Yeah.
You know, you can put him in a cubicle out there with everybody else. And then you got Laurent Mackey's in his office there. Yeah.
That's right. With his feet up on
the plants need a little water. So
2 creams.
Yeah.
And I said, no salt.
No salt. Boy, I tell you. Well, anyway, Christian, longest serving Formula One team principal, sacked by Red Bull on July 9th. After 20 years at the helm of this team, the departure obviously came as a bit of a shock to him and others mid-season. You know, it's been a pretty tough 18 months, I would say, for Christian personally and professionally.
For the first time.
With off-track
something like this.
With off-track
controversy,
and on-track performance issues with the car this season. You know, really, what I want to do, because when it came out, I'm not going to name names, but there's certain pundits, journalists or photographers or scribes or fans or whatever. I think one gentleman, I think I've seen like 8 videos he's made all this week on Christian. It was like, oh my gosh, man. It's just not how I roll. I should have just been releasing videos constantly all day long and get my phone. So this is just in on Christian, and had AI, create a picture of Christian crying in his car in the parking lot at Red Bull and posting it. But it's just not how I roll. But anyway, I read all the noise and all that and looked at a lot of it. It's just a mess and a lot of just crazy speculation and, that sort of thing. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a step back. I wanted for Grace and I to take a step back, have a little introspection about this, and then have a meaningful conversation with you, our friends, about what we believe might have been more of the catalyst of this. I think, Grace, let's just a little background. I'm not going to dive into all of my notes. I have pretty comprehensive notes here, but
I printed them out.
Yeah, and see it. You've got very nice.
I annotated them. I did some research before we got here. Look at that.
Very nice. I like it.
Huxley was working overtime for this one.
Yes, indeed.
He did a very good job.
He did do a very good job. He's like, oh. Wrong, BS, wrong. So Christian joined Red Bull. Well, it was the Jaguar team. And then Red Bull bought the team. He joined in 2005. He was the youngest team boss at the time, 31 years old. 124 Grand Prix victories, 107 pole positions, 287 podiums, 8 drivers' titles with Sebastian Vettel, Max Verstappen, 6 constructor titles. Built a team of 1,500 personnel or thereabouts from the initial 450, establishing not only a state-of-the-art facility in Milton Keynes, but some might argue a dynasty.
Yes.
It's I don't care who you are and what you think of Christian, but that's incredible.
I don't think that anybody. I don't think you can. I don't think you can take that away from him. I think 50 years from now or whatever, more like the way we talk about like Lotus or something like that, right? And Colin Chapman, right? Like
Colin Chapman,
right? When we get some amount of time between this moment, like Colin Chapman amount of time,
or even Ron Dennis.
I don't think you can take that away from Christian Horner. And similar to, I agree with Ron Dennis. Now, there's that little Spygate thing, and that definitely sunk the team. It sunk Ron Dennis's career, and so that you have that. But I don't think you can take that away from how successful Red Bull's
That's still one of the most anticipated autobiographies from me personally would be a Ron Dennis autobiography. The stuff that guy knows and has seen through time in Formula One would be amazing to hear. But anyway,
I think so. I agree with that.
Yeah,
I think he need a ghostwriter though, because
he would need a ghostwriter. Yeah, that would be that would be kind of a stiff read. Yeah.
Maybe he could work with Zach. Maybe what he should do is like, you know how they have like the Google Translate, you can like filter it through like Snoop Dogg and it'll come out Snoop Doggy. That's what he needs to do. He needs to take Ron Dennis but run it through Zach Brown so we'll actually be entertained by reading it, right?
Put the Zach Brown filter on it.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah. That'll work. But no, I agree with you. And
because Zach is Ron's agentic AI.
I mean,
it improves Ron's workflow.
But I think that Ron spanned such a time span, such a change in the sport, as did Christian Horner, and I think
Christian did too.
Coming in as a privateer. I mean, right when he started, everybody's like, "Oh, you're a fizzy drink company. What do you know?" Right here he is, 20 years later. So I think that for sure, there's that time span. I don't think you can look back on his time and just say, it was nothing.
Right. So I thought the first thing I wanted to do is when we think about Christian's departure and his, some people a week later like, oh, I wasn't shocked at all. I knew this is okay, whatever. Reality of it is, a pretty sudden mid-season. It's a pretty dramatic thing to do mid-season with a team boss. That's pretty dramatic.
Anything is dramatic mid-season. I think it could be your rear lift guy, right? Like your front jack man, right? Like that is a dramatic change mid-season. You don't want to change anybody mid-season because you're trying to hold everything the same. And you invested all this time training people, just like any of us in our own jobs, right? One of the reasons when you interview an employee, you want them to stay because you're going to invest all this time in them, and it's going to really suck if they leave in a year, right? If you're just some stepping stone to some other job. So you're always trying to suss that out. So you don't want the rear jackman to go. So why would you want
I was just going to say a lot of people were, stunned and just, gobsmacked that they would change a driver mid-season. Yeah. Well, how about changing a team boss mid-season?
I think the drivers are very visible to us, right? It's like a CEO at a company or something like that. It's just the person that's visible to us. But any of those people in that org chart, you never want to change them mid-season. It's like changing somebody mid-project. Why would you do that, right? You're working out. You got a gel. You got a system. And you're vibing. Right. Why would you interrupt that? Let alone a team principal. They were vibing. I don't know. Did Red Bull vibe? Who knows? But
Red Bull vibed.
You don't want to get rid of your team principal mid-season. I think at the end of this, if we had gotten to the end of the season and it was like January and they fired him, I'd be like, okay, maybe not completely unexpected, but right now they didn't even make it to the mid-season break.
Pretty harsh.
It's pretty shocking.
So I thought what I wanted to do is, because this happened quickly and everybody's like, wow, it's amazing and it's just so shocking, it happened out of nowhere. I thought, well, yes and no. I agree. It seems sudden, seems abrupt. Mid-season is difficult, odd. Why mid-season and why now in particular?
Why now?
Yeah. But truth be known, the erosion started, you could pin it back to 2022. Yeah. So I spent some time putting together a little bit of a timeline. And I want to go over that. I'll go over it relatively quickly. I got a lot of notes, but I'll go over it quickly. But I hope to take you on a little bit of a reminder journey for those who've been watching for a while about Red Bull. And this really, I think you can put a pin in October of 2022. And this is when Red Bull founder Dietrich Mateschitz passed away. Yeah. Now, Suddenly, yeah.
Right, so, I think that's a part of that too, right?
Quickly anyway, his death ended really an era of singular focus and complete backing of Horner and his leadership and decisions. So what Dietrich said went, period. And that when that happened, that sort of magnetic leadership and passion for motorsport that Dietrich had was now bifurcated into two camps: the Austrian Red Bull GmbH, the Austrian contingent HQ, and then the owners in Thailand. Right. And so this really, and even at the time we talked about it and we mentioned this would be kind of an interesting, dynamic between the two groups. And then as things went on, it was, well, I'll get to that. But, we figured this could, with the Magic 8 Ball, shake, 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 looks likely, be a friction point here between the two groups. Horner, at that point in time, remember that there was conversations that everyone's kind of waiting till the dust settled on Dietrich's passing to see, would there be any big dramatic changes? Would Red Bull say, well, Dietrich's gone now, we don't want to spend this money on Formula One, we're out, right? Or something big,
like
we were
they're
all
Alpine, right?
Yeah. And we were trying to figure out what might happen here. This could, kind of touchy. As the dust started to settle, though, they were sort of doubling down and recommitting. So in 2023, there was this Christian, I think, started in 2022, late 2022, consolidating more direct control in the midst or in this vacuum of this power struggle between Austria and Thailand, right? So he's out here trying to run a racing operation, having issues with engine supplies, and trying to figure out, you two in the boardroom, you guys got to figure this out, but we got a team to run. He starts consolidating that direct control around him. In 2023, he officially was announced as the Red Bull Racing CEO, not just team boss.
Right.
So he assumes a very broad scope in what he does, team principal, CEO. Then he had convinced Dietrich to start their own powertrain group. He had oversight of that. So he's the team principal, he's the CEO, he's over the powertrain group. And then he was over all of the marketing efforts of Racing Bulls, not just Red Bull, but Racing Bulls too, right? Different team, different structure, management structure, but he was over that.
Right.
So that happened and was announced in 2023. Also in 2023, it was played down what happened, but Rob Marshall left Red Bull and went to McLaren. Now, this was played down by Red Bull, as you do, Grace.
Of course. They're not going to be like, oh, no, that's the end of us, right? Like, that's not what they're going to be like Rob Marshall, who, don't let the door hit you on the way out. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
I mean, again, it's similar to the Adrian Newey. He was just one guy, and people already were doing everything, and we don't really need him.
Right. Yeah, they weren't about to come out into the press and say, we are in trouble.
Absolutely, right?
Not going to happen. But anyway, that actually was a big blow.
Yeah. As we've seen at McLaren, right? I think if Rob Marshall had gone to McLaren and McLaren continued to not be great, we could say, well, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But I don't see how, as anybody who watches McLaren, can't see Rob Marshall's fingerprints all over the 24 and the 25 season. And so, the writing's on the wall, I guess, right? That yes, Rob Marshall leaving Red Bull, going to McLaren, huge deal.
So if you think about this in the timeline, this is the first sort of surface cracks and fissures.
Correct.
And keep in mind, they're winning championships at the moment.
This is what
races.
makes people sort of wonder what's going on, right? Like,
why would Rob Marshall leave a team that's won 2 titles when it has Max? It's kind of weird. Then in, call it December 2023, January 24, you had the harassment complaints. Those emerged. Okay. So an internal complaint filed by a female employee about unwanted advances. The Red Bull did an internal investigation. That began. Horner is cleared by both internal and external investigations. But there's this residue that's still lingering, right? And it fractured the F1 paddock. And like the piranhas that they are in the F1 paddock, as soon as somebody, senses blood, they're on them, right?
Right.
And this happens. And so as soon as this happened, then you had a lot of strong comments, everybody trying to take Christian down over this issue. Zach, very unpleasant about it. Toto, outspoken about it. And this is what they do, it's kill or be killed, right?
Because Christian Horner would for sure do to them, right? It's not
of course.
It's not like it's Franz Toast, right?
No.
Maybe we'd be like, Franz Toast wouldn't say this, but Christian Horner for sure, Mr. Fix Your effing car, right? Like for sure would do the same. So I think that just encourages you more to be that way.
Yeah. So they all will go after each other and have and do and will. That's true. So this all happens. Then the investigation leaks and the reputation damage. So a private dossier of alleged messages leaks in February, March,
huge. Yeah,
which was pretty big.
yeah, it was
So
big.
once it's one thing. Once they kind of felt like they'd buttoned it up, they'd done investigations. Look, this is internal and external investigations, testimonies heard, evidence heard, and then they said, all right, we absolved Christian of any wrongdoing, and they thought they'd put all that to bed, and then boom, somebody comes out and releases all this stuff, right?
Right.
Then you have, at this point, after, and it's one of those things, at the time, it was a little odd, but once those investigation leaks came out, when it was real, when folks realized that the investigations didn't end Christian's tenure there or ruin his or end his career, then all of this stuff comes out, and then Jos Verstappen, of all people, comes out really swinging publicly and is criticizing Horner, saying Red Bull's going to explode if he stays, he needs to quit, which, and what he did with this woman and all that, which, you and I at the time thought, well, that's a little bit rich coming from the guy who's accused of beating his wife. I appreciate you picking up that mantra and trying to support, but, that's really, then this started to roll in February, March 2024 and rolled all last year. And every time Jos was in front of a hot mic, he was complaining and criticizing. And then a lot of rumors about the Verstappen camp being, displeased. You get to March 2024, the internal investigation clears him. But some in the press and some of the team argued that the process seemed opaque and unconvincing.
It was opaque.
Yeah. So there was well, then just release it all, right? So this is all lingering. This, in my mind, had an internal impact. Paul and I have talked about it, Grace. You and I have talked about it.
Sure.
It's hard to go through something like this if there was evidence. I didn't even know this person. Okay,
Right.
one thing. But then there's a lot of people where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And it's hard to go through something like this. And I think most of you at home saw the body language and the commentary in the press. And there, you could tell there was a weight on this team. Just this oppressive weight.
Yes. And I think all the how much time must have been spent now making sure Christian's always seen with Jerry, make sure they're always holding hands, make sure that, that takes away, you only have a finite amount of resources, and now some of that resources is now devoted to damage control. And that's all everybody's looking at and talking about. It was just like, how much could we see, Jerry everywhere? And it's kind of like Eddie everywhere, but you know what I mean? That really stuck out. And I do agree, because I always think that, I don't know, maybe I live in a world someday where an accusation from an employee, a female employee, to their male boss sticks and people believe them. But I don't live in that world. And so you always have to ask yourself, why? Why is this still sticking, right? This is a weird reference, but I remember, I don't know how much this is natural news and this is old news, but in the early 2000s, there was an intern called Chandra Levy who disappeared from DC, and it was all the talk, right? And to me, I was like, how many people do you think go missing from DC in a summer? Why is this the person that sticks to? Why? Because she was having an affair with her congressman. That's not the person that disappeared her and killed her, but it was a huge scandal. So why this person is always valid, because we don't live in a world where accusations that are truthful just stick because they're truthful.
Right.
So why does this story have legs?
And there was, call them conspiracies or rumors or whatever, but, the whole thing about Jos being so involved, there were some rumors that he actually was involved with this employee.
See, right? There has to be more to it than just.
I'm not saying that's true.
I don't know.
That's just rumors I've read. And that's what had him so amped up. So two guys and this woman, and who knows? But it was concluded I do think loyalty started to fracture there. You had probably Christian Horner loyalists. You had people that were probably upset about the whole thing. You have Yoss, who's continuing to try and leverage the situation to oust Horner, which is uncomfortable because his son is winning championships with Christian.
His boss.
It's just weird. In April and May of 2024, then Adrian Newey announces after 19 years he's leaving, and sort of said he wants new challenges. But it did seem there were clear tensions between Christian and Adrian. Was that over this issue? Was it over other issues? It's difficult to know. Neither have said, but this is that sort of oppressive weight that you could feel this team. Rob left before this all came down. Adrian left after this came down. Go ahead.
I just think that, if people remember back, speaking of, the Wayback Machine, when Adrian Newey was at McLaren, Adrian Newey was always just going to leave McLaren for boats. For as many times Adrian Newey was like, oh, Ron, this is over, we're leaving, I'm going to go build boats. And he didn't, and he didn't, and he didn't, and then he went to Red Bull. He said that as much as Bernie Ecclestone was like, oh, there's not going to be a race at Silverstone anymore because I'm mad at the British Racing Drivers Club, right? This was just like an ongoing, oh, that's right. Yeah, it's about May. And so now is when Adrian Newey says he's going to leave McLaren. And then he actually did. So I think the fact that he said it and he did it, to me, because that was always the thing at McLaren. Like, him and Ron were always like, I'm leaving. They were like a days of our lives, right? And it really seemed meaningful that he went to Red Bull, and then he stayed at Red Bull for so long. And then he was just like, no, I'm out. There was no back and forth rumors. He was just like, nope, I'm going to go.
Right.
Well,
Yep. And then by mid to late 2024, there was more stuff. Ben Waterhouse, David Morgan, there was other people that left. There was even some rumors that I read around that time that even some of the folks over in Red Bull Powertrains were concerned about the governance and et cetera, et cetera. By late 2024, early 2025, then we start to get into this performance slump. Red Bull's car falls behind McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes. Team Verstappen starts raising alarms about competitive direction of the car and team. Performance clauses in Verstappen's contract starts to become a talking point at this time. What said details are around there? Who knows how those might have been released?
right.
Those become real talking points at this point due to the car's performance. May and June of 2025, they fall to fourth in the championship. Verstappen's exit clause are looming if the top three is not secured by summer break. That's what I've read. I don't know if that's in there. The Austrian side of Red Bull, their leadership is demanding I think they definitely want to keep Max Verstappen, no doubt about it. A lot is being leaked and a lot of comments in the press about conversations with Mercedes and Team Verstappen. Of course, Mercedes is probably happy to kick that notion down the road just to create tumult within Red Bull. Christian's spending a lot of time fielding questions about Max, talking to them, his exit clause, blah, blah, blah. And so all of this sort of rolls up into what's going on. And then, as we know, in July, Christian departs his role. There also was reports I read of an immediate purge of Horner loyalists in marketing operations and parts of the powertrain group. I haven't seen an exhaustive list or names or who else has been let go. And now you've got Red Bull trying to restore central control and put Laurent Mekies in Christian's role, and then moving Alan Permain into the team boss role of Racing Bull. So just a quick timeline. I kind of went through the people when we talked about notable staff departures. Adrian Newey, we know, Chief Technical Officer, long-standing creative genius. He left. Rob Marshall, he left, engineering chief. That was huge loss. First crack in the technical fortress for Red Bull. Ben Waterhouse leaving. Performance engineer David Morgan, aerodynamicist. There's some rumors that Pierre Wache, the technical director, is kind of disillusioned during some of the internal fighting or possible sabbatical. We have Jonathan Wheatley, the sporting director, who left, went to Sauber Audi. Will Courtenay, Red Bull's head of strategy, heads to McLaren. And then I've read some rumors of people that may have left the powertrain, but I haven't verified any of that.
I mean, of course, Pierre Wache is going to get out of there. He's the Mike Elliott Red Bull, right? Like, he's the guy that's going to get the blame. So he's not going to stick around, right? So of all the people on that list, like, oh, I better go, right? Because he's for sure going to be the one left holding the bag.
He's going to get Patty Load.
Yeah, right. Nobody wants that. But what I think is interesting when I was looking through this, the idea of getting rid of Christian Horner loyalists. Now, first of all, I think the whole concept of a loyalist is always kind of a weird, especially when you're not high ranking, right? When you're just a person working a job, I don't know what that means to be a loyalist or not a loyalist. You're a person doing a job, and you're going to do your job, most likely whoever's your CEO or your team manager, because you probably don't know that person like that. But everybody who works at Red Bull knew that Christian Horner was going to be there. It's not Ferrari. It's not like they came under one administration and 6 months later they're under another administration and 2 more years is going to be another administration. It's always been Christian Horner.
Right.
So who there isn't a Christian Horner loyalist? Because why would you work there? Because if you really detested Christian Horner for some reason,
you would have been one of the people that left.
Right, because he's the Steve Jobs of Red Bull, right? Like, so if you don't like the cut of his jib, why would you work there, and how would you be able to stay working there? So
you were like, I'm going to Rob Marshall this thing. I'm out of here.
I mean, that would just be everybody who works at Red Bull. I mean, again, I think the loyalist phrase is a little strong, and there are probably people there that are like, well, he's not my favorite, but I work so far over here under like 20 people between me and Christian Horner. I don't have to deal with him every day, so it's fine. I certainly have worked in that kind of a place, but you know, they're all there because he's there. They knew he was there. So I just think the idea of like, we're just going to clean house. Well, you're going to have to fire, what did you say? Like all of that, 1,500 people that he has hired since Jaguar days, right? Good luck.
I think it's kind of funny. You can see Mark Mateschitz on the list going, okay, so next we have Nigel. What does Nigel do? Right. Nigel repairs the power transformers on the autoclave when we do carbon fiber autoclave work.
Yeah.
Definitely a Horner loyalist. Go get him.
I mean, on top of the fact that you and I both know, who have worked at places, nobody goes through a list like that. They just go, who's paid the most? Get rid of him. Right. Get rid of her. Right. Like, who here does it? Like, there's not like somebody like, like the James Val's going through a spreadsheet at Williams. It's not what's happening when people get fired like that.
Excel spreadsheet,
This whole group, gone. That whole group, gone. You make a lot, you're gone.
Right.
And then we'll rehire you back as a contractor because actually we shouldn't have fired you. We actually really needed your skill set. So please come back. Oh, you're not? How about we pay you more and bring you back as a contractor?
Right. You're looking down there and say, okay, but... All right, wait a minute. Who's this Max Verstappen guy? We're paying him a fortune.
We don't need that.
Get out of the car.
I can drive a car.
You remember that time? Folks, I am so sorry. I cannot remember the details. Was it Ferrari? Who was it, Grace? See if we can remember.
Okay.
Mid-2000s. Somebody that had... Was it... Who was it? Somebody was in charge of one of the manufacturers high up that was looking through payroll and found one of the drivers. Which driver was it? Lewis? No.
It was like, who's this guy? Get rid of him. He costs too much.
Exactly. It's like, who is this guy? He's making more than everybody at this place. Was it a Fiat executive?
That sounds right. It has to be somebody that's kind of a few steps away from
looking at Schumacher salary or something like that. I remember that. Distinctly,
who's this Michael Jordan guy? Do we need him?
Yeah. Somebody listening will remember. Yeah, it was like a high up executive was looking at payroll and found a Formula One driver. So, what the heck does this person do for us?
Sounds very Alpines. Who hired this guy? Why is he costing us so much money?
Who is Flavio Briatore? Anyway. I thought, look, there's all kinds of noise about, what was the final straw and all that. And to be fair, I think most of it is speculation. What we can discern is what we can see on the outside looking in. And we don't work for Red Bull. And I think even some of the people at Red Bull, they probably hear a lot of things. But I wanted to take a step back and try to have a measured approach to this and offer what I think there's, 1, 2, 3, call it 4 kind of main reasons that this kind of all went down. Okay. So let's talk about those. I think the first one, I had made the comment, I think on the article I wrote about this on the website. Hey, and speaking of Eddie Everywhere, it's a total segue. This is 9:47. So earlier today, I had the honor of interviewing Tim Mayer, and you're going, Tim Mayer, hey, Tim Mayer. And the rest of you are going, Tim Mayer, who's Tim Mayer? He is the guy that's running for FIA president against MBS, Eddie Everywhere. All right. So if you're listening to this podcast, but you have not gone and listened to my interview with Tim Mayer, do so. Run, don't walk. Tim, incredibly sharp guy. We talk about his background and everything he would do to fix the FIA and bring respect and reputation back to the FIA. So really enjoyed that interview. It was a great opportunity for us to speak with Tim. So please give that a listen and help Tim out. If you listen to that podcast or see some of the shorts on YouTube or some of the YouTube videos or whatever it might be, please share that as many times as you want and share it on socials and try to get it out there, because he's only got 5 months to campaign, and MBS is, well, he's MBS and he's changed all the statutes and everything to insulate himself from this vote. But please, or that's just my opinion, but please go out and give that a listen and share that. All right. Okay. The reason I bring that up is because Tim Mayer and I were talking about one of the major real concerns about the FIA is MBS's consolidation of power in the FIA. Well, that's kind of what happened here at Red Bull. And so I think one of the major reasons in that article I wrote at the website was this reminds me very much of the boardroom power struggle at McLaren that ousted Ron Dennis. Right. That's right. That was the prime mover for all of it. You could say, well, the Bahrain Sovereign Fund investors didn't like the color of Predator gray. Well, they didn't like the Spygate. Well, Ron, he's old school. And
they didn't like the Spygate is an understatement. I'm pretty sure they didn't like the Spygate.
Yeah, they didn't like that at all. But be that as it may, bottom line is a power struggle at the boardroom level. I think prime over most of everything else, this is the major issue. He was the CEO of Red Bull, team principal Red Bull Racing, had oversight of Red Bull Powertrain. He was the one that convinced Dietrich Mateschitz to start their own engine program. Right? So he has oversight over that. He also had control over Racing Bull's marketing, etc. Now, post Dietrich, the amount of control all of a sudden became a concern. So while Dietrich is there, Dietrich's fine because Dietrich has ultimate control. But with Dietrich gone, now you've got Austria, you got Mark Mateschitz and Oliver Mintzlaff, and then you've got, I'm going to try to pronounce his name in American, I'm terrible at this, is it Shalom Uvidya, who owns the other portion of Red Bull. And so now all of a sudden Austria's like, whoa, Christian's got a heck of a lot of control and power over there. I think the leadership felt uneasy about that. They wanted to start distributing that control internally, having someone in charge of the powertrain, having someone, at Racing Bulls in charge of their own marketing. Christian's a team boss. He could work, with the team, want to distribute that. Maybe the marketing Red Bull Racing can be handled by a marketing department. It's that notion that we've seen some of the teams now. There's a team CEO and there's a team sporting director. There's a team boss, a team's principal, and a team, it's this more corporate organization instead of the old school Frank Williams, I'm the team boss, owner, and you can pound sand, right? Right. And I think that structural governance conflict within Red Bull and the corporate headquarters is really the catalyst for this. Why it happened now, I'm not sure. That seems like something that they could have possibly talked out. I'm not sure. But the other big key, Grace, for me is all of that control, that consolidation of control for Christian over Red Bull is probably what created concerns for Austria. So Austria is concerned about it. Christian still had the backing of the Thai owners. But I'm wondering if a lot of that was driven to the fact that Christian didn't have any ownership in the team.
Right.
Unlike Toto Wolff.
Right.
Who has a third, I believe.
Because, so I think one of your points is, right, the idea of a benevolent dictator. I think it is very hard in this day and age to have a benevolent dictator with this amount of money, right? So you could have that in the 70s. The amount of money involved wasn't nearly as much as it is now. Yeah. There was no Formula One movie being made in the 70s like there is now, right? So I just think that it's just such a bigger deal now, and there's so much more money involved and more eyeballs looking at it, and they have to be successful. So that's going to make it hard for the benevolent dictatorship to be a model that anybody can really work under. And then I agree with you, right? So what does this guy have? Because then that's what I would be worried about, right?
Yep.
It's at the end of the day, I'm the guy that's going to get Mike cracked, not Christian Horner, right? Like, so you have to be worried about the fact that it's your money. You're the one that's trying to make an investment out of this. And that may be the thing too. Somebody like Frank Williams isn't there for an investment. He's there to race. I don't know how much of that kind of that always seems to be at heads too, right? Like, I mean, you see that with all sporting teams, right? That some rich guy or his family owns some team and they're using it as an investment. They're not really there to see the Lakers succeed. They don't really care if, Red Bull necessarily succeeds. They want to know that it's increasing their bottom line. And those two fractions are always going to be at odds with each other. And you're right. I think him being a hired person and not somebody who is with vested interest in the way the Toto is going to be a conflict. It's not going to help.
Yeah. And that's a difference, even in McLaren's case, Ron, very heavy owner, stakeholder. Yeah. Toto Wolff, heavily invested stakeholder in Mercedes. Christian was not. Yep. So could Austria have sat down with him? Look, we want to decentralize the power here. We want to spread it around. And part of that, though, is to bring Christian in as a stakeholder and a portion of ownership of the option to buy in of Red Bull Racing, right? Now, he may have been, hell no. Who knows how Christian would have reacted? That I have no idea. But suffice it to say this whole power struggle is really, I think, the main catalyst that drove it to this point.
Right.
The next thing I think that dovetails with this is the internal power struggle after Dietrich Mateschitz's death. And I remember you and I talking about it at the time. This will be very interesting to see. This was late 2022. You and I were wondering, will this destabilize the power structure? What's going to happen? Will the team remain committed? Will Uvidia, how does he feel about Formula One? What does Mark and Oliver feel at the Austrian side? What do they feel? They seem to be growing more and more skeptical of Christian, and there were rumors that the Thai ownership was the one backing him, and that's what was keeping him afloat, while Mark and Oliver felt like they needed to make major changes. And meanwhile, Horner's fighting to secure that control, right?
Right.
The interesting element is that Helmut Marko is just floating around in this whole equation, right? He's like a buoy, just kind of floating out there on the waves, and the waves are getting bigger, and he's just floating around. He was always seen as Dietrich's voice in racing. Right. And I think you could sense when the whole internal thing went down and Yas got all, animated, you could see that body language between Christian and Max. And you could even hear it over the radio. Remember, Christian used to come on, great job, Max. And Max, thanks, Christian. That all went away.
Yeah.
That was gone. But you could also see that sort of separation with him and Helmet.
Yeah. And I think this is a little more related to your previous point, but I think the thing is that if you look across Red Bull, not just Red Bull Racing, but all the, the Flugentags and the dance competitions and all the stuff, like, it's fun. All the stuff they do is kind of fun, wacky stuff. They drop people from helicopters on mountain bikes and they mountain bike down the side of a mountain, like crazy extreme sport kind of stuff. Formula One is an extreme sport, but not in that same kind of way. And Red Bull is not the fun guys. You know what I mean? Like, they're not the team that I'd be like, oh, if the teams were people instead of teams, and I was going to have a party, and I'm like, who am I going to invite? I don't think I'd invite Red Bull. Again, I might invite McLaren because Zach's going to be fun, or I'm,
fun.
Or somebody down, further down the grid because, they're like watching a feeder series. They're going to be fun because what else? Invite Nico Hulkenberg. It'll be fun, I just think there's some part that doesn't kind of fit the Red Bull ethos, even though the team is successful. And so I think that if there's anybody that was like, hey, this is costing us a lot of money, this isn't really fun, it doesn't really fit the Red Bull ethos, that's all the more reason that I could see it's all very Alpine-like, right? Whether they're Renault or they're Alpine, that's sort of like back and forth makes it really hard to run a team because you can't be 1 foot into Formula One and 1 foot out of Formula One. You have to be all of your limbs into Formula One. And I just think that there's some part that isn't gelling anymore here. And it's hurting the team because you can't race in Formula One that way. But I just don't think it really. And I agree with you. I do think that Didi was a lot of this, right? Like, he was able to do the people management in a way that he could say, I know, but here's what we're going to get from it. Or, I know it's not as much fun as Flugentag or, all these other things. But here's where it's the real value of it. And that's just gone. And if his son doesn't provide that same sort of like, oh, I know now I've inherited my dad's wealth and this company and I'm now the other owner. And if he's not pushing that narrative, I could see where it just falls flat because everything else lines up for Red Bull to not be really a part of the Red Bull ethos and staple.
Yeah, it is. It is different. They entered Formula One with that sort of, vibe.
They were the fun team.
They were the fun team.
In the beginning, totally. Like, they had the little magazine. They were totally the fun team for like 3. And then they started winning, and then they stopped being the fun team.
Yeah,
right?
they had to do #adulting. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
The funny thing about it is that, you got Helmet there bouncing around on the waves of tumult. You've got Christian who's consolidating the power around his role. Kind of being alienated with Helmet. My hunch is that Helmet ultimately sided with the Austrian side. And then you've got Mark Mateschitz, the son, and Oliver Mentzlev. Right. And they're the post-Dietrich leadership team of the Austrian group. And they want to take the lead and consolidate power back from the fringes of Red Bull's investments. So on one hand, they're all upset that Christian has got Red Bull Racing completely wrapped around him and consolidated his control over Red Bull Racing. And they're letting him go because they want to consolidate all the power back around Austria and the HQ, right? So the very thing that they're upset about is what they're doing, in some sense, none of the purest sense. So I think this internal power struggle, the centralization of power, all of this is the prime mover of why Christian's no longer there. I think these are the biggest issues. Another issue that, like Helmet, that is, Helmet has a way through, I think, this whole thing just saying, I don't know, Christian's gone. We're going to just keep fighting. I think he was much more involved in this than what anybody's suggesting. On that same note, the Verstappen camp, Team Verstappen. So Jos out there publicly criticizing Horner, demanding that he quit. He became a constant annoyance in the press every race weekend, to the point where you and I talked about it. I said, why does Christian even invite him there? Why? I mean, he doesn't drive for Red Bull, and all this does is create white noise and stuff going on that truly his son could do without, you know? And I think it argued, if you really care about your son, then stop going in there and torching his boss and his team, you know?
Right.
Just let Max work it out, right? Max got a little disillusioned, certainly, with all the internal drama, but he steered clear of it. Now he's disillusioned with performance. Everybody's talking about his performance-based exit clause. That's weighing on it. Horner's continued presence was kind of risking this Verstappen delicate situation. And would he go to rival teams? Certainly Mercedes is rumored, Aston Martin, Alpine, Audi, all different groups are rumored to be, hunting for Max. And in the end,
who wouldn't be?
Yeah, well, who wouldn't be, right? And in the end, it seems that Josh ultimately got what he wished for, and Red Bull prioritized, seemingly, keeping Verstappen over Horner. But I don't think this is the sole reason of the departure. Horner, how do you feel about it? Do you think, Grace, that Horner became a direct threat to the team's ability to retain Verstappen, knowing the rift between Jos, Max, and Christian?
It didn't help.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't help.
I mean, I guess we don't ultimately know how deep that is. And some of that is because I think it would be easier to answer this question if Lewis Hamilton was the driver. You know what I mean? Somebody who is a little more hard on his sleeves, a little bit of I don't want to say nicer. I just think it is the way of Max Verstappen. It is the way he communicates is much drier, much straightforward, not very compassionate. I don't mean that he's a bad person. That's just his personality. And so I think that makes it harder to read, because happy Max and sad Max are both sort of like flat snarky. Whereas like unhappy Lewis, you're like, Lewis is unhappy, right? Like it's much clearer when Lewis is happier.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess it's kind of like Oscar Piastri, right? Like that's the meme that it's like Oscar happy, Oscar sad. You know what? It's all the same picture, right? Like, so it's much harder to get a read on Oscar's feelings because he's got a very flat affect. And I think Max has some of that too, that he's kind of, which is what makes him successful in this sport, but makes it hard for us to kind of get a grip on this in a way that might be easier with Lewis. Although of course Lewis can act and lie as well as just as anybody else. But so I think that's what makes it hard to read. He seems more unhappy at Red Bull right now, but what does happy look like for Max? It's not that to me that the way he presents himself just isn't that different. So I think that's what kind of makes it harder to read.
I have I may have a different opinion on this than many. Well, to make my point, let me go back. Do you guys remember for the last few years, when Lewis's contract was up, I was saying Toto shouldn't renew it, and she should just let Lewis go to his next adventure, because he's super expensive, and he had George, and it's a long-term thing, and the money you would spend trying to retain Lewis, you could really use in development of that team moving forward, because you're thinking long-term, and Toto didn't take my advice. He doesn't know I exist. But that's kind of what he did, It's like 1 year, Lewis like, no, I want this long-term. I want to be paid until I'm 90, and I'm going to be an ambassador, and I'm going to talk about you on Instagram. And Toto's like, thanks, but no thanks. And so he left. My feeling on this is I get it that Mark and Oliver feel like they can really step in and take control, and they can do this, but are they title winners? Because we know Christian is, and we know Christian can be and will be again. He was with Vettel, and Vettel left. Yeah. So he went out and got Max, and he won it with Max. And my feeling is is he will do it again without Max. Right?
Right. I mean,
now,
there's no reason.
I know it's Max Verstappen, folks. Don't get me wrong. I knew it was Lewis Hamilton. I get it. But the team, as Ferrari has always been, and maybe this is just the Ferrari fanboy in me, is that the team is bigger than the driver. Ferrari has survived multiple world championships. They let Michael Schumacher go right at the zenith of his career, you know. They let him
forced him out.
Yeah, they did force him out, basically, to make room for Felipe Massa.
Right.
And so, you know, in my mind, Mark and Oliver, if you sold the farm and ditched, you know, could it have been Verstappen camp said, look, it's either him or us. Okay. And they said, okay, we'll let Christian go and we'll keep you. Okay. For how long? Through the end of his contract with exit clauses, mind you? Okay. And when Max leaves in 2, 3 years, 8 months, whatever it is, well, then where are you? Right? Well, we got Laurent Mekies, and nothing against Laurent. He's probably a great guy. But Christian Horner built that empire, right? And so you got to look at the long term in this, and I don't know. The only way that this portion of our things that we're discussing could be a bigger catalyst than the power struggle at the boardroom level is if Verstappen flat out said it's him or us.
And I don't think he did. And B, I don't really think this is about Max Verstappen. It's not about Max Verstappen, but it's not about Max Verstappen. I think that,
I agree.
you know, of course, I mean, because of course Max is always going to be, you have to be, you're not going to make it to this level if you aren't always positioning yourself to be in the best place to win, right? So the second any team starts, I mean, this is why we're always like, oh, did you see so-and-so was over in so-and-so having some coffee? And they always go, well, that team has the best espresso, right? Like, I mean, there's a reason because you always, I mean, that's how I feel in my job. And I am not in Formula One or anything nearly that exciting, but you always have to have your ear to the ground. You never know when an opening is going to come up. You never know when a connection you make is going to pay off. You always have to be thinking about your next job, your next opportunity. So I don't think that Verstappen's behavior is different or abnormal, and certainly not different or abnormal for him. I just don't think all of this is about what it's not. Max isn't the catalyst. I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either.
It.
I mean, I don't know Mark or Oliver. I'm sure they're really smart guys, and surely they wouldn't bet the whole farm on a 2 or 3 year remaining contract on Max Verstappen on a car.
Especially when Max has already made it clear that he's like, you know, live or die, I do not care, right?
Yeah,
like,
he's
like, I'm Max Verstappen. I could go race soapboxes, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I don't think Mark. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they would. I don't think so. I mean, I think they would be thinking long term for Red Bull, of course. And why would they capitulate? So I don't know. The other thing I want to talk about is this ongoing sort of HR fallout, the harassment scandal, and those kind of things. You know, the investigation is called opaque. The dossier leak was brutal. Staff loyalty, and you had that morale fracturing. I've read rumors that Red Bull powertrain was destabilized, lost a little trust in leadership, et cetera, et cetera. Don't know if that's true. Could be just total rumors. Even after the investigation, you know, cleared him, you know, Joss continually pounding the desk and, you know, the leaked WhatsApp messages and all this stuff. It just created a real untenuous position there briefly in that team that left a more long-term residue on that team and some fractured relationships, et cetera, and, you know, and a large part, and I think you and I even said at the time that it was like, you know, if this is true, then this is on him.
Yeah.
This is a horrible move, you know. You know, you built your house, and this very well could tear your house down, or at least see a lot of really high quality people leave. But I don't think this is the catalyst that did it all. Was it additive?
It did not help.
Certainly did not help.
It poured a lot of salt in that wound. And I think this is the other thing where Christian Horner, this isn't to say that, maybe this kind of goes back to the loyalty idea. This isn't to say that people can't change. But he's been with this team for 20 years. 20 years.
Yeah.
He started with this team.
Right.
So People know what they're getting into. I'm not trying to go like, it's okay that he harassed somebody, that it's okay, you know who he is. That's not where I'm trying to go with this. What I'm trying to say is that I'm just going to say he's a bit of a jerk face. I think that that's always been his ethos. That's who he is. That's the character he plays on Drive to Survive. He likes being the jerky guy, right? And I think that you have to know that is what you are bringing to this team. But that's the downside of being the jerky guy, is that when something happens, if you weren't a jerky guy, people would be like, oh, Zach Brown? Really? And that narrative, right or wrong, because Zach Brown is just as capable as Lauren Mecke, is just as capable of Christian Horner, of, allegations towards a junior staff underling, right? Anybody is capable of that. And to think that we're not all capable of that is a delusion, right? But it's going to stick when your personality is one that people kind of get rubbed by because you're the jerk, and that's kind of the ethos that you carry around with you, and that's the character you play. I'm the jerk. Well, this is kind of why other people don't tend to play the jerk all the time, because this is what gets stuck with you. The people go, oh, that sounds right. Like, I don't know anybody that was like, really? Christian Horner? Really? No, everybody's like, and that's not fair. And that is, public. I'm not trying to defend, Christian Horner. I'm just merely speaking to the larger aspect of why, there's this sort of character thing that it, right or wrong, is what it is. Narrative is important, and being liked is important. And it is, it was just like we were talking about with Max Verstappen. I think that people don't like Max because of his personality, but that's just who he is. And I don't think that, who he is. I think if you really kind of listen to him beyond his terse, I don't like this, I don't like this, he's fine. He's very pleasant in interviews, right? I think the same could be true of Kimi Räikkönen, right? Like, I think Kimi Räikkönen can rub really people the wrong way because of the way he does interviews, because that's Kimi and that's how he rolls. But this is a downside of having a narrative. It makes it real easy for things to stick, because people are just like, well, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and I don't know. We can all have our, innuendos and hints and allegations and, prejudgment and all that. So I don't know. I don't know if it happened or not. I have no idea. No one does. So other than those involved. Do. Yeah. Right. So, but all the fans sitting at home watching races, you don't know.
No, but you're going to fill in the blanks. Right?
Well, of course, people are going to connect dots, and then there's always a big contention that's guilty until proven innocent, or innocent until proven guilty. It just depends, So, yeah, it's a big hot mess. But overall, irrespective, the whole thing become this oppressive situation.
It was not handled well, and I think that's the other thing, too. And that's all the more reason that, again, I think that it seems so weird to put so much on the shoulders of one person, but I think that if Didi was alive and this happened, he just had the ability to not make it go away. That's also not what I mean, but to rally people around it and to answer it, whether that is an apology, a fake apology, thoughts and prayers kind of fake apology, but something would have been done. And it just kind of lingered and lingered and lingered, and was unanswered. And, and then it just kept coming up. It just wouldn't die, which is why I think there's something here that maybe someday we'll find out about, that there's a lot of money involved. It was the Queen of Spain. I don't know, because it doesn't make sense to me from my side, because how many people have been mistreated by their boss? Why is this one case not going away? There's something here that somebody keeps bringing up.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it was always going to be, certainly in the paddock. And the more they just said, oh, internal investigation, we're not going to say anything more. External lawyers, we're not going to, comment on it. But the team bosses, the other teams, they smell blood in the water, right? So they're going to constantly bring it up. It became the 800-pound gorilla talking point, right?
But why didn't Red Bull handle it?
I'm not sure.
I don't know why they didn't say anything. You know what I mean? I think that they just because that's never, right? You and I work for companies, and, people, if you don't say, this is why we're doing this, people fill in the blanks, and sometimes they fill in the blanks incorrectly. And then you're like, oh, well, the reason why we did that was for this other reason, but because I didn't say
you
anything.
Get ahead of the narrative.
Right, you have to say something. Again, even if it's your fake thoughts and prayers, you have to do something. You can't just say, we'll just see how it lands and move on with it. I mean, I don't have a degree in public relations. I do. People, right, but they have people there that's their entire job, right?
Yeah.
You have a whole team of people that know how to handle this. Right. Whether it makes me happy how they handle it or not, but they know how to handle it. And that just seemed to fall very flat at Red Bull.
Yeah, it was interesting. The crisis management wasn't really on song. And it but anyway, it certainly didn't help matters. Not the definitive reason.
No, I agree.
That he's
much like Max.
gone.
It didn't help, but it wasn't the reason.
And then finally, I think the least among this on our list of reasons is the declining performance on track. I think the 2025 car, I think what this does, how it may have been additive to the equation, is that the lack of performance may have opened the window for Max's exit clause. So in that sense, opening that window and putting that more pressure on that, you could argue, okay, the declining performance was a factor in this. Yeah, it may have been, because it may have opened that window for Max to rattle some sabers around the exit clause. Is it the definitive because the car isn't doing well? Well, no, the car wasn't doing well for 8 years under the oppressive butt kicking of Mercedes in the entire field. The car wasn't doing well. So it's not that, car teams are up and down. Ferrari, my gosh, if we got to, scuttle the whole thing because we're not performing well, Ferrari would have been gone a long time ago.
I want to know, there's a part of me that's like, first of all, I need Max's lawyers or his management team. Like, I can't believe that Red Bull, if this is true, that this is the exit clause, I can't believe that Red Bull agreed to this. This seems nuts. I need his people on my side. I need a race, right? Like, this seems nuts because all it takes is one team. I mean, because you're always going to I have not been watching Formula One as long as you and Paul have, but I have been watching for 20 years. There's always a front pack that's like 5 and then a back pack that's like 5. And I mean, those, you always have your sort of like Force Indias that can kind of be good, or your Aston Martins that could kind of be good, could kind of be bad. They kind of like jockey between those two, but you always have your front and your back. And to think that they only allowed for 3 teams and that was it, that seems like, I need your people on my side next time I have to negotiate something, because I can't believe, no matter how good Max Verstappen is, but I also have no comparison. I don't know what other exit clause, what does Nico Hulkenberg's exit clause look like? What does Fernando Alonso's exit clause look like? Like, it would be interesting to sort of like know the gamut of what these exit clauses look like, because maybe this isn't ludicrous. Maybe this is very typical. And to me, it just seems crazy, but it seems pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think so. And I think in the end, Grace, I think Red Bull's goal, the Austrian component of this, is to really, I think it was ultimately this whole move is to re-centralize F1's control in Salzburg, decentralize the power across the divisions, keep Verstappen at Red Bull, try to rebuild some morale and cohesion within the team, and get rid of that residue that was lingering from this opaque situation, and then try to start rebuilding some competitiveness in this car, and with their new powertrain, right, for 2026. That's a noble charter for Red Bull. I can't begrudge them that. I understand that. But I think,
and rather than
go ahead.
Saying rather than trying to wrestle control, just get rid of them.
Yeah.
Right? That makes the wrestling easier.
Yeah. Sometimes, they just could have went with the whole theory of, these are the things I just mentioned, these goals. These are the things that we really want to do. And let's just rip the Band-Aid off, because try to delicately walk out of this swamp is going to be very difficult, And
he's embedded. He's been there for 20 years. I mean, if it really is a problem that is centralized around Christian Horner, then you're going to have to get rid of Christian Horner. He's been there from the start.
Yep. And at this point, they just switched from missiles and went to guns and went in full blazing,
Yeah.
So that's kind of how they roll. I guess in summary, we can wrap it up, but he's out. I don't think it was any single scandal alone or issue. I think ultimately he amassed a lot of power that was centralized around him. He lost those key allies when Mateschitz passed. I think that the tie component was with him, boom, not with him. And I think that has been relatively recent. And as soon as that happened, as soon as Austria convinced Thailand, I think it was game over. And then boom, I think they moved as soon as Thailand agreed that they weren't going to do it and not going to support it. His leadership ultimately fractured the team with the whole issues that happened. Culturally, operationally, Verstappen camp, very upset, turned against him. That was clear. Red Bull's results on track performance, constructors, opens Verstappen's window. I think there's a lot of technical management that is still left. Maybe they were planning to leave. That's a rumor. I don't know that for true. Maybe him getting let go. Maybe there'll be a mass exodus of people that were loyalists and they'll leave too. I don't know. The implications, in my mind, is what's left when the dust settles, right? So right now, Grace, you got Laurent Mekies. He's the replacement. A lot of people say he's an interim replacement until they restructure.
I don't know. It's Red Bull. I love that what you do to the drivers apparently is true for everybody, right? Like, we just thought Red Bull replaced their drivers with somebody from, from Toro Rosso is what I almost said, from Minardi, right? So Jaguar, anybody at Jaguar can be replaced by anybody at Minardi, not just your drivers.
Right.
And it applies to your whole staff. So we're going to get rid of Christian Horner. We're going to bring up Laurent Mekies. Cool.
And there's another thing. I'll throw this curveball out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say in the next coming week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, Max comes out and announces he's going to another team.
Well, we have been following their airplanes around all week, so.
Yeah, well, there you go. But let's just say that happens.
All right.
Then what that would tell you is that Christian was let go because he didn't retain Max, because that decision has been made already.
Which could be true. I mean, right? Again, you see that in stick and ball sports all the time, right?
Yep.
Like a coach can take, I watch a lot of basketball, right? Like a coach can take the team all the way to the first round of the finals and they get fired, even though that team has never been to the finals before, but they didn't make it to the playoffs. So, they didn't make it to the top tier, so they get fired. It's ludicrous, right? Like that person did so much to improve this team, but they didn't improve it the way the front office wanted it to be improved, and so out that person goes.
Yeah, there's been times when something happens in a team. Well, it's like Ali leaving Alpine, right? We're like, what? Why did he leave? What is going on? Then all of a sudden, a few days later, you find out there's some stuff going down with cash and bag, and what? So this could be we're letting Christian go because that was the final straw. You couldn't keep Max, and then the other teams aren't ready and to announce or anything, and maybe in 2 or 3 weeks all of a sudden Max got ta-da, I'm at Mercedes or something. And if that happens, then you'll know that had a big thing to play and Christian leaving.
But I think honestly, I agree with you. I think it is more interesting if Max stays at Red Bull than leaving.
Yes.
I think if he leaves, it's much clearer what's happened here. But if he stays until like 2032 or however long the contract he has to sign with Red Bull, that's what's interesting.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I don't know, how will things go for Red Bull long term? I don't know. I mean, in one sense, I think, wow, that seems short-sighted, but that's critical of me because I don't know all the details, so I can't really fairly say that.
Don't let that stop us.
That maybe
it's not a very good podcast.
I know it may be very long-term thinking. I just don't know the details, so I don't know if it is or not. I'm surprised a little bit that they couldn't have come to agreement with Horner and talked out ownership or different things, and maybe he's completely unyielding. If that's the case, it's like talking to a brick wall, and maybe this is his unyielding position is due to a lack of real ownership, but maybe that's not going to happen. So I think a lot of these things are all combined. I could be wrong. We could find out that, Max says, I'm going to Mercedes, and Red Bull says, and that's why Christian's not here, because he couldn't keep Max.
Right.
Who knows? But I think, can Red Bull and Laurent find success again? Do the Austrians know how to run a team? I mean, Mark and Oliver may feel like they can. The difference is we know Christian can. We know that.
However, Christian is the guy that never listened to Checo, and that's part of how we got here too, right? Like, somebody did tell you that this car was a problem,
right?
And you didn't listen, and yet you're still at the team, and Checo is not.
Right.
So I'm just saying, Checo was right. Here we are.
Checo was right. He's always right.
Do you like my face?
Yes.
You like it?
Apparently we do now, Checo.
It's the classic, right? Like, we're just going to get, I mean, I just think that this is so, it's Alonso is what I'm going with, right? Like Alonso can drive around problems. Max can drive around problems. It's MotoGP. Look, I just want to note that we made it over an hour and 15 minutes here before I brought up MotoGP.
Does anybody have anything for Marc Marquez?
It's Marc Marquez, right? You can't judge how good a bike is by looking at Marc Marquez. He can drive anything. So some of that is true with Max Verstappen, right?
Did you like my Terminator meme, by the way? Okay.
I did.
Just asking.
I mean, there's been a lot of great memes, but I think from this weekend. But I think that you can't look at Max in the same way you can look at Alonso.
Right.
Like, what, and he can drive around problems that us mere mortals cannot. And so when Checo said this car is a problem, and they went, Max doesn't have a problem, that's not helping your team. And now here we are, right? And so I don't know. I hope, Checo's just wiping away his tears with all those dollars he got, because I think we can see now that writing was kind of on the wall.
I think so. Well, let's wrap it up.
Before you wrap it up,
yes,
of course I do. So I just want to point out that we did not talk about where Christian Horner is going to go, right? So I agree that he got Mike cracked. They're not going to send him on gardening leave, right? They really can't do that. So they're just going to make him in charge of, trackside operations.
Right.
But this is my dream for Christian Horner, not because it's a good idea, but because it's the messiest possible option out there. I need him to go to Alpine, because what could be more destructive than Christian Horner and Flavio Briatore together? Nothing. Yeah. Who doesn't want to see that happen? I would prefer that Pierre Gasly wasn't at the team when that happened, but I'm sorry, you might have to catch some strays, Pierre Gasly, for this dream to happen, because Alpine is missing a team principal, and Flavio hasn't stepped into that role.
I know.
Just saying, there's an open space.
I was doing a little thing. So, okay, he's got some burnt bridges out there. So,
just a few.
The talk of him going to Ferrari, Lewis is like, no.
That's not happening. Right? There's no way.
There's no love there. Then you think, okay, well, he could go to Alpine. Pierre's like, oh, hell no. No.
But I don't. He doesn't have the same sway that Lewis does. But yeah.
No, I know. But you got Pierre there. He's like, hell no. Yeah. Then you think, okay, well, let's see. Couldn't go to Williams because they have James Vowles. They're happy with him. But Albon would be like, hell no. Then you could say, well, could go to Aston Martin, and I think both Fernando and Christian would go.
Could you imagine Lawrence Stroll and Christian? Oh, okay, you thought there could only be one Pope when Otmar Schnafnauer was there.
Yeah,
this is craziness. Right. There is no way if you couldn't make it work with Otmar Schnafnauer, Christian Horner is not going to work.
And then you think, well, what if he went to Cadillac because they need a team, but and they have if they hire Checo, no. So it's going to be very difficult. It'll be interesting.
Reunited, and it feels so good. Let's send Christian Horner and Checo both to Cadillac. Right. This is great.
Get the band back together at Cadillac. Come out swinging. Sure, I'm all for it.
Oh wait, I'm trying to think of who would be a you need a Nico Rosberg or somebody for the other driver. Who would be really just make this more messy? That
Mick Schumacher.
I think we talk about during Spygate the first court case, and Lewis Hamilton was like, I didn't know anything. And then the second court case, he was like, wait, why don't I know anything? Why did they know something and nobody told me?
Nobody told me about the secret air you put in your tires.
Right. That would be Mick Schumacher. Like, what is going on here? I'm just, right. There's like bombs and stuff going on behind him, and he's just like, I'm just trying to race this car. Right. Why are you people doing this to me? Right.
Well, the Aston thing would be Fernando, but I think Adrian newey would be like, no.
No, but again,
so I don't know where he's gonna
Larry,
go.
I can't see Larry and Christian Horner working together. I don't see that.
Either.
I think if he couldn't get along with Mike Crack, he's certainly not going to get along with Christian Horner.
No, maybe he could go to maybe he could go to Haas. He could go to Haas.
I think
bring Haas all the way to the top.
I don't know that Gene. Oh my God, Christian Horner doing I gotta call Gene. Could you imagine that phone call?
Yeah, I gotta call Gene.
Yeah.
Chris like, okay, it's Gene. That would be funny.
Okay, I do. As much as I don't want that to happen, I do want that to happen. Just for one phone call on Drive to Survive between Christian Horner and Gene Haas. That's all I want, and then he can be gone from that team.
Right. It's like Gene is like Spectre on the phone, calling the agent.
Imagine.
This is turning into a Bond villain. Anyway,
I love it. Maybe
right.
better than Flavio Briatore and Christian Horner together would be Gene Haas and Christian Horner together.
That would be funny.
That would be great.
All right. Well, that's what we think about Christian Horner and his departure. But you let us know what you think. If you feel like there are certain things that were a catalyst to make this happen, we hope you enjoyed this discussion about Red Bull and what we think may have caused this. A programming note. We are going to record this weekend a little early for next week's podcast due to some schedule issues. So look for that early, probably late Saturday or Sunday. You should be able to get the next week's podcast. And we'll be back to do it all over. And back then, we'll have some Albans, Cats, of course, and some No Shit headlines. And if there's some mailbag.
All the fun stuff you people have come to enjoy from the off race weeks. But, this was kind of big news. And,
it was.
We kind of wanted to spend the whole podcast kind of pulling together everything that's kind of out there, because I think that's true. There's been a lot of a little over here and a little over here and a little over here. So I think that, you and Huxley really pulled together a nice document here that kind of pulls it all together for everybody. So.
And darn it, Christian deserves it.
That's right.
He deserves it.
I always think my favorite scene is the first Drive to Survive when he asks his son, who's your favorite driver, and he says Lewis Hamilton.
Lewis Hamilton,
That's right. Even your child is a jerk, right? Like you've just raised a little jerk, a little Christian Horner jerk, and you just got it right back in front of TV for all of us that your son said Lewis Hamilton and smirked. He knows exactly what he's doing. Just for the record, Christian, I don't think you're a jerk. Okay, that's crazy. I'm good with Christian. Everybody says, but he when I wished him happy birthday, he didn't have a clue who I was. Oh no, that's just funny.
I get it. It is funny.
He could have said that to anybody. That wasn't personally aimed at Todd. I just think he definitely isn't the guy that if I was having a bad day and I needed a hug, he's not the guy I would go to. Whatever phrase you want to use. He's not the hugger in the paddock. We need to give him a t-shirt that says, I don't give hugs. Yeah, that's what he needs. Okay. I mean, Zach Brown, he's going to give you a hug, right? He's going to give a big American hug. Yeah. That's right. But yeah, that's not who I would go for that. Right. So, and that's fine. All right. Well, let us know what you think. You can do that at theparkformay.com. Share your opinion with decorum and civility. As always, a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. And hey, Patreon supporters, while I got you, if you see the interview I did with Tim Mayer, please share that and on socials and post that. That would be much appreciated. I posted a post on our Patreon page today, and it's a huge favor to ask, and would really appreciate that. And until later this week, when we come back to do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long, Grace. See you in a couple days. It's supposed to be.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.